Welcome to the J Scott Outdoors podcast. This is your guest host, Cliff Gray. Today I have Alan Bolen on the show. Alan is a successful archery hunter. He has killed several species of Boone and Crockett animals with his bow, and it appears to me that Alan is also super successful in the business world. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with Alan. And Alan, please, step in. Is there anything else that you want the audience to know before we get to chatting here?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I do love business, and bow hunting. You also know I love jujitsu. I kind of get very obsessive about the few things I do, and I kind of suck at everything else. But I get pretty good at, if I choose something, I'm going to put my time into. I'm gonna really go all in and try to get good at it.
Yeah, and
You put like a basketball in my hands or something like that, bro, it gets ugly. Like, I'm not one of those guys that, like, I'm a jack of many trades. That's not me.
I gotcha. Clear to me that you can get obsessed about one or two at a time and go
Absolutely.
full
Yeah.
throttle.
Yeah.
And in that intro I gave, I think it kind of underemphasizes Boone and Crockett animals with a bow. And I want to make sure that the audience kind of understands, that distinction.
Mm.
That, a lot of guys that are hunting with archery equipment, they have the goal of, animals being Pope and Young trophies, right? To qualify that. And they're not actually, shooting for Boone and Crockett trophy animals. And just so the
Yeah.
audience knows, there's like a huge relative difference there. It's
Magnum difference.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to do it with a rifle, man. So I'm very impressed. All the challenge that you've taken on with that. And I've done a little research on your background, followed you on Instagram, and you have an interesting approach to it, honestly, Alan. Like how much you put into each species in the length of those hunts. Um, where did that, where did that like did you kind of manifest that goal on your own, or where did that come from, that's your goal?
Yeah. So that's a great question. When I started bow hunting in my early 20s, so whatever, almost 25 years ago. and and I heard about these record books, and I'm a guy that's always been drawn to challenge. Like, if
Sure.
I guess I start doing something, I'm like, well, what could make this really hard? How could I measure this? How could I make this like something that I could be really proud of? And so I started looking at the record books, and I looked at, the Pope and Young record book, and I thought, well, this is cool, so I'd love to kill some Pope and Young animals. And funny enough, I tried for several years to shoot a Pope and Young animal, and it was, for some reason back then, it was very difficult for me. I would shoot an animal and it would like net under, just like barely, and gross over, and I just couldn't, like,
Sure.
for some reason I couldn't really get it done those first few years. And the first Pope and Young animal I shot was also a Boone and Crockett animal, which
Okay.
is like you were saying, just last night, I'm in Oregon right now, blacktail hunting. Just last night, we were driving, three of us, and talking about Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett. And somebody was asking about American elk. And they said, well, what's Boone and Crockett for American elk? And I said, I'm pretty sure it's 375. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And they said, well, what's Pope and Young? And I said, I think it's 265. And they said, no, it's not 265. There is no way there's any record book in the world that would consider a 265-inch elk Boone and Crockett, or excuse me, a record. And
Right.
so I think it is. I haven't looked it up since
Yeah,
last
yeah.
night. But the
It's
point
it's
is, like,
bad,
the
Alan, because
difference between 265 and 375 is like, I mean, you're talking a 3-year-old bull compared to, like, a 7-year-old with the perfect genetics. And it's
right.
like, they're not even in the same realm. And
Yeah.
so anyway, as so that first animal I shot that made Pope and Young was also Boone and Crockett. It was a mountain goat, 52 and 6/8. It was actually a world record at the time in
Sure.
2005. And for some reason, like, when I got that Boone and Crockett score sheet done on that mountain goat, I thought, why am I thinking about Pope and Young the way I'm thinking about it? I mean, I love the Pope and Young Club. I'm a member. I'm
Yeah,
active.
sure.
I go to every convention. I freaking love that organization. But as far as the record book itself, I just something just teed off in me when I got that Boone and Crockett score sheet from that mountain goat and said, this is what I want to do. Like, I
Yeah, I
want to shoot
got you.
booners with a bow. I mean, it's like, I can't think of anything harder. Like, if I want to make my life hard, this is going to, like, when I say hard, I mean, I love that. It's enjoyable too. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I started
You mean it
down
in a
that road.
positive way. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you, man. And I have to laugh a little bit, Alan, because I'm an official scorer for both Pope and Young and Boone
Oh,
and
you are
Crockett,
nice.
and I can't remember the scores off the top of my head, so I'm embarrassed to say that. But what the bars are. But you're right. It's a huge difference, man.
Yeah.
And not to take away anyone shooting elk that are
No,
five
heck
because
no.
with a bow, I mean, I'm not near the archery guy that you are, but still killing with the bow in general is just hard. But I totally understand what you're saying, like how you manifested this goal. It's almost in a way you fell into it, but you realize like, hey man, like thinking into a bigger challenge actually is appealing to you.
So another thing that happened, Cliff, if I could just comment one more
Yeah.
thing, is, and again, I want to be careful here to not like, hurt anybody's feelings, or I'm not trying to like, the people that are on this quest I'm about to talk about, they're, it's freaking awesome. It's an awesome quest. And that's the North American 29 quest.
Yeah.
Right. And I first looked at that, and when I first started bow hunting, I think maybe only a few guys, maybe 5 guys or something had done it, and it seemed like pretty cool. Like, wow, that would be amazing to bow kill like all 29 North American species. But when I started, so I started down that path. But when I started doing it, I realized that I didn't want to do it that way. Like, I didn't want to like go and just shoot an animal to check a box and say I did.
Yeah.
I want to shoot a giant of that species. So I don't like, and I'll never do all 20. It's impossible like to do all 29. I mean,
I
the
got you.
way I'm doing it,
Yeah.
maybe I have 8 right now, 8 Boone and Crockett species with my bow. Official. I have several in the awards book, which is I'm
Yeah.
talking all-time book. I have 8.
Yeah, and is
And
that's kind of your goal is the all-time mark?
yeah, all-time book.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
awards book I don't really think about too much, but
Yeah,
yeah, so the all-time book, and maybe I'll get to 15 before I die. Maybe I'll get to 18. I don't know.
yeah,
But the point is, like, I've decided I'm not going after the 29. What I'm going after is as many booner species as I can. And where that ends, I don't know. We'll see.
yeah,
But
yeah,
to me, like when I go and I shoot an animal and it's like, whatever, nice average animal, I'm like, I want to go back. I don't feel like I'm done. I want to go back. I want to shoot a giant in this species before I will check the box on a species once I've killed a giant.
yeah.
And there's
No,
certain species, you'll like elk and mule deer, for example, excuse me, mule deer and whitetail for me. Like, I'll hunt those the rest of my life. No question. I mean, I love, in fact, all deer. If I could do like any type of hunting, just because I like throw all goals out the window and just, what do you love to hunt the most? It'd be the 5 species of deer.
yeah, I got you.
Freaking,
Sure.
like, I'm hunting blacktail right now in Oregon. Oh my gosh, it's so
Yeah,
much fun. I love them. But anyway,
yeah,
that's kind of how I got there.
yeah. And I got a question, and I'll kind of propose it to you this way. This approach that you're taking, and we're going to dive into a topic I want to talk to you about here. So what I noticed from, you know, guiding mule deer hunts or guiding elk hunts, and a lot of my stuff was wilderness stuff, had, backpack hunts, horse stuff, all of that. There's if you The reality is just to kill a big mule deer at some level, if you got the money to pay for X amount of hunts, you can kill just a big mule deer. That's
Mhm.
possible. Now, if a guy came to me over the years and says, I want to shoot, a 215-inch typical deer, and I got infinity amount of money, it's like the money doesn't matter at that point.
No,
Now,
doesn't.
the reason I'm proposing this to you this way, Alan, is that part of it for you? Is like you can't buy the like this level of I guess accomplishment. Does that play in at all? I don't want to, give me your
Yeah.
thoughts on that.
No, there are probably certain species you can buy,
Sure.
like Boone and Crockett. Like, there are, like, say, desert. Bighorn and Rocky Mountain Bighorn. I
Yeah.
believe those, if you have enough money, you can buy them. You
Yeah,
go to
yeah,
the right
sure.
spot with big rams. I mean, it's not going to be that hard.
Hmm.
But there are a pile of species out there that Boone and Crockett cannot be bought.
Yeah.
Cannot.
Yeah.
Mule deer being one of them. Mule deer being one of them.
Right.
Doll sheep being one of them. Brown bear being, I mean, grizzly bear. Like there's black bear. You just have to have done it. You have to go to the right spot and you have to put in a ridiculous amount of time and do everything right. And on top of that, you got to get lucky.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yep.
Especially now you're adding the bow into it. You know,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
it literally is one of those things that it is so like based on doing everything perfectly and being like it's not just being a good hunter, like you need that too, but you need to be a good researcher, a
Yeah,
good
yeah. Yeah.
networker, you need to be good at so many different things to actually make it happen.
Right.
And yeah, that turns me on that it's like it's exciting because it's so difficult.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you
sure.
think about Doll sheep, Cliff. There are 4 Boone and Crockett Doll sheep a year killed in the world with every weapon included.
Yeah.
4 a year on average. And we're hunting Doll sheep in Alaska, the Yukon, a tiny bit of BC, and Northwest Territories. I don't know exactly how many Doll sheep are killed a year, but I mean, it's got to be thousands of Doll sheep a year. And
Right.
then tens of thousands of Doll sheep hunters, especially if you include Alaska, and 4 a year get killed, and there have
Yeah.
only been 2 ever killed with a bow.
Yeah.
Like it's like almost like a fool's errand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it kind of cracks me up, Alan, because you're saying all this with like such a smile and excitement. Because the thing is like I think a lot of people listen to these type of discussions and they're like, well, this trophy thing is arbitrary. Like, it's arbitrary that Boone and Crockett says X is the score for
Sure.
for a dollar sheep. And it is, but it doesn't matter because it sounds to me like to you, it's not about like holding like X size ram. It's about like that's the goal and that's what I want to achieve. Like to me,
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
value in that. So
No, it's like if you look at okay, just you compare like 168-inch desert sheep to 170-inch Doll sheep. Those are the Boone and Crockett minimums.
yeah,
Desert is probably the easiest species of the 29 to kill, Boone and Crockett, and Doll sheep is probably the most impossible.
yeah, sure.
And so, but so I could sit around and complain about that or embrace it and have fun doing it. Or people talk about, oh, all the deductions and stuff on deer. It's just not cool the way they do it. I don't like, I mean, sure. Okay. I mean, I can agree with you, but I'm not gonna be able to change it. It doesn't matter. The system's been around for a long time and it's an awesome system that's done so much good. I'm just going to embrace it and play by the rules, figure the rules out and try to be successful.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally get it. And I would guess, Alan, like this is not to like totally jump subjects, this is probably your approach to business too, right? Because I mean, I feel that the same. I'm like the way I think my brain works is probably analogous to yours in this regard. It's like, look, we can bitch and whine about all this stuff, but you better like play along the rules and find some success.
Yeah. Yeah. Complaining doesn't get you anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Embrace it and go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Alan, do you mind? Because people are gonna wonder because the type of hunting you're doing, it does take some disposable income and some flexibility in time. What do you do for a living?
Okay. Yeah. So I own my primary business. So I mean I owned an outfitting business for 17 years in British Columbia, and that was amazing. And it was good financially and everything else. But my primary business is smart home and solar. So residential smart home and solar. And I have door-to-door sales guys is our primary means of marketing.
Okay,
And so we train up young guys to build teams and go to different spots across the country and knock on doors and talk to people about making their homes smarter and more efficient.
gotcha.
So they set appointments, and then somebody comes in and does a presentation, and the smart home business is more recurring revenue, so they pay a monthly fee, and so
Yeah,
it's a recurring revenue business. And then the solar business is more of a like we're selling the solar system, and it's a one-time transaction.
I gotcha. But so it sounds like you're in the business world where where you focus on is building sales teams, which is a fairly hard thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Absolutely. Like if somebody, I'm the CEO of the company, but if somebody asked me, what do you do every day? I recruit, train, and maintain and retain the best salespeople I can possibly find.
Yeah, I got you. So I'm gonna bring this back to hunting, man, because I had I would get this question over the years. To this day, I still get it a lot from young people. Usually they're young men who they're obsessed with hunting. I've had guys that guided for me or whatever. They're obsessed with hunting, and really what they're trying to figure out before they have a family and they fall in love and everything else, in their mind, they're trying to figure out how to find a path in life where they can hunt a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you what I think, and I want you to disagree with it, Alan, or whatever. I think there's a couple paths you can take. Some of them are more obvious than others. A lot of guys, and to some extent, it's the path I took kind of the second step of my life. But a lot of guys, they'll get into the hunting business because they think it's a good way to hunt a lot. I actually I don't think it is personally, right? Reflecting on my career doing it for 10 years, I loved it, but if I wanted to hunt a lot, it wasn't the best career, being an outfitter for 10 years and guiding a bunch. I enjoyed it for other reasons. I enjoyed guiding or whatever. But another approach a guy can do is he can do a trade or something that has flexibility, and he can go hunting, but he's not going to have the disposable income. Or another guy can go out and do what you did, be an entrepreneur, build up a business, and get into hunting that way. I actually personally think focusing on those latter two options is probably the best idea for most people. But I want to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Like outfitting, guiding, or even being in the like an industry, sales rep or whatever, working for some big industry corporation. Um, you do get some opportunities because of that stuff. Like you get some perks and you
Sure.
have like really interesting connections. But I would think, the people that I see hunting the most are people who have jobs that pay well and have nice flexibility. And the thing about the way I look at work, like my job, like I enjoy my job, whatever. But what really drives me in my job is hunting.
Yeah.
Like when I go to work every day and it's really difficult and there's very difficult things happening and it's like a complete grind a lot of times, like hunting is like deep down what fuels me. And
Yeah.
sometimes I look at it like this, like, okay, so I don't enjoy every part of hunting. Like let's say, you're glassing for Coos deer in 100-degree weather and the sun's beating on your freaking exhaust and your eyeballs feel like they're gonna pop out of your head. You've been glassing so long. Like you'd rather stop, right? But you just keep glassing because that's what you need to do to get the job done. And sometimes I look, at work like that, like, okay, this is part of the hunt. This is part of the hunt
Yeah.
that's got to happen. Like I got to make the money to make this happen. And
Yeah.
so like you connect it all and you find motivation that way. And like doing very hard things and pushing yourself in in your professional life extremely hard because it all connects.
Yeah.
Because you can't
Sure.
have one without the other. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so I'll extend it. So, because I've had this happen to me, a 25-year-old guy comes to you, Alan. He says, "Look, I'll never be able to kill the Grand Slam because it's going to cost me 200 grand, 250 grand to do it."
Yeah.
What do you tell a 25-year-old guy that says that to you?
Well, I would say you're thinking way too small. Like that there's no reason, like you're 25 years old. There's no reason why you can't, if that's really what you want to do, you can do it. You just got to put your mind to that. Like there's
Yeah.
just like literally you could, I mean, you can make millions in your life if you decide that's what you want to do.
Right.
But I don't know of a stronger motivator personally because it is my motivator than doing stuff like shooting grand slams, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so
No.
like that's what like makes me, it gets me out of bed every morning and makes me just go and maybe take risks and work harder than I should and all these different things because I have that fire. And the 25-year-old who's saying it's never going to happen, well, it won't. If that's the
Yeah. Yeah.
way
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
No, I think you nailed it, man. If they say that and they've already given into that, and 25 is like an arbitrary age. I'm sure this could be
Yeah.
35-year guy, 40-year-old guy, or whatever. I mean, it's like, yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's a great goal.
Yeah.
I mean, in the next, just be like, okay, in the next decade, I gotta somehow figure out how to stuff away $250,000 to do that. And I think
That's-
that's a go. I mean, it sounds absurd to say it out loud. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
listeners like these guys are like la la land, but it's true, man. If you set those type of goals, you'll end up with the ability to do it. I think.
Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, if I have a 25-year-old guy come to me and say that, and he really wants to, like, I put that guy selling solar,
Yeah,
he makes that money no problem,
yeah, sure. Because he
and has
works at it.
complete flexibility in his schedule. Like, yeah, there are jobs out there that really lend themselves toward this, and you have to be strategic. It's just like what I was saying, like killing a Boone and Crockett animal with a bow isn't just about your hunting ability, although that's important. It's also about how you research and strategize and network and all these different things that all comes into play in your business life too.
Yeah,
You
sure.
have to make good strategic decisions. Yeah, if you decide to be like that, you're going to be a blue collar union worker or something, and nothing against that. That's, you can live obviously very great life.
Sure.
But if you're saying, I want to kill a Grand Slam sheep, but I'm not gonna like do anything different, and I'm
Yeah.
just then yeah, it doesn't work. You have to be strategic and put a plan together that has a chance of working.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I guess to some extent, Alan, it's probably everybody's personality and makeup is a little bit different. But
Absolutely.
but in general, I think there's a lot of people that discount their ability to go on these type of hunts if they have some foresight.
I'll tell you
Um,
one way you're not gonna go is by putting in for draws,
yeah, sure. Yeah, let's talk
because
about
that
let's
system's
talk
coming
about it.
down. Like,
Yeah. So the problem,
like
and just so the audience knows, me and Alan don't know each other, but there's going to be like a bunch of agreements in here just that are
yeah.
popping up. But yeah, I mean, yeah, comment on it. Comment on the math a little bit. Comment on where it's all going, Alan, and that
you
I
know,
might pop in with my thoughts too.
Cliff, I need to write an article on this because somebody's gonna steal my idea here. But just, you know,
Yeah,
I want to calculate the odds of drawing a bighorn tag and the money it would take to draw that tag, and the odds of taking that same amount of money and putting it on the roulette table,
yeah, sure,
and the odds of winning whatever it is, 10 in a row, that would
yeah,
give you the amount of money to get that. And I bet you the roulette table wins.
yeah. No, and it's crazy you use that analogy, Alan, because I
Or is
think
it even
about just
called, I don't gamble. Is it called a table? It's
yeah. Well,
probably
I
not
don't
the roulette wheel or
wheel
whatever,
or
or
whatever.
blackjack or whatever you want to,
Yeah,
so
but
one of those close to 50-50 type of gambling activities, because I don't gamble. Sorry. I
yeah.
sound like a moron here.
But
But
where
my
they got
point
like a
is, if
little
you play
little
the
edge.
odds out, your odds are higher taking that, say you would spend like $4,000 putting in for bighorn tags over the next 20 years. Let's
Yeah.
just say. Well, take that $4,000, put it on the blackjack table, win 10 times in a row. I haven't done the odds, but I bet you anything, it's a
Oh yeah.
higher odds.
Yeah. When I would extend the analogy to say that really what you're doing with a lot of these draws is you're playing in on a roulette table where the house can change the rules 5 years from now,
Well,
and
there's that
probably
too.
it's probably
Yeah.
going to. You know what
And
I mean?
they probably need to,
Yeah. Oh
because
yeah.
my kids will never draw a tag.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, you're gonna have, like, in Utah, you're gonna have everybody drawing desert sheep and bighorn sheep and even moose and mountain goat or whatever. They're all gonna be in their 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They're gonna be
Sure.
the ones drawing the tags, and the kids like are so far behind. And it's really a sad system, because it's almost like it was a good old boys thing. Like,
Yeah.
okay, let's build this system, and first in, we're guaranteed to draw. And
Yeah.
like all the guys literally designing the systems are the ones getting in first.
Yeah.
And so then all the good old boys draw, and they're like, hey, this doesn't work anymore. Let's change it so that our kids can draw too. After we rigged this thing so that we get all these amazing tags, after 10
Yeah.
or 15 years, we're all guaranteed to draw out. Now let's change it. I mean, I don't know. That kind of disgusts me when I stop and think about that.
Yeah, and the thing is it has, not to go crazy into this whole Alan, but the problem with it is it has a lot of like this gambling like thing built into it because what do you see on Instagram? What do you see in these magazines? You see all the people that drew. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So you
right.
there you get this weird cognitive thing where you think like, oh, eventually. I mean, even I do it sometimes. I got 20 points in Wyoming or 20 points Montana, and then I'm like, oh, I gotta draw. I'm gonna draw a bighorn tag soon, and then I actually go calculate the odds. It's like, dude, I'm still better off just not doing it anymore. You know
At
what I
20
mean?
points.
Yeah,
So imagine
exactly.
my 12-year-old at 0.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
and
it's literally, I respect like Idaho and New Mexico, these states that don't have that
yeah,
system.
yeah, sure,
It's way better.
yeah,
The
yeah,
other systems, I can't help but feel like there was some self-interested corruption sort of in, I wouldn't, corruption's maybe a strong word, but some self-interest in designing those systems.
yeah. How they were developed, and I haven't really thought about that too much, but I see exactly. I see how that plays out that way. Um, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. It's I think the species that pounded it home for me as a guide was mountain goats, and it hit on a bunch of things that you just talked about, Alan. And that's that in Colorado, it's a preference point system, but there is a random element into it, whatever. But the odds basically play out where older people end up with those mountain goat tags. So most
Yeah.
of the guys that draw got 15, 20, whatever, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself like, okay, so you can go on a pay to play mountain goat hunt in British Columbia for X amount of dollars. I don't know what, probably you can probably go
15,
on a good one
15 to
for 15
20.
grand. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So you can do that. So and you can go when you're 40 years old, or you can go when you're 30 years old, or whatever. Like that is so much of a better deal versus waiting till you're 70 years old to crawl up and just. I mean, you've hunted mountain goats a lot
Yeah.
too, probably more so than I have. I've guided a dozen mountain goat hunts or so, and it's like it's the hardest physically. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like there
Yeah.
there is a like I'm honest with myself. There is in the next 30 years of my life, there will be maybe 25 years. There will be a point where I will not go mountain goat hunting.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And it's the
Yeah.
first one you lose. And so I think about that and it's like, man, there are so many people who have waited so long and they got snookered. That's how I
Yeah.
feel about it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because now they're not having the hunt they could have had when they were 35, 40 years old.
That's really interesting what you're saying, because that when you brought in like it's almost like, the lottery, like you're advertising like some lucky dog's gonna win it.
Yeah.
And they're like selling this dream that's, yeah, that's very interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. And at least my view is I don't know that like I don't even know that part of it's on purpose, Alan. You know what I mean? I don't I think it's just I think it's the hunting world. Obviously, you were gonna show all the success and all of that, but it is kind of a hustle, you know,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that in there and I guess for the audience, what I would say is like if you're a resident of certain states, it still makes sense to put
Well,
them.
and also if you're talking deer, elk, antelope,
Yeah, sure, it's a
you
different
know,
different deal.
that's a totally, then the draw systems make sense, actually. They
Right.
actually do make sense. But when you're talking those once in a lifetime species that are literally going to build up to, and when you're talking preference points too, like preference points are just
Yeah.
like, I don't know how that's fair. I don't know, like, if you're an 18-year-old paying taxes, how it's fair that somebody has 30 points ahead of you,
Right.
and you're all paying taxes, right? And like,
Yeah.
okay, how is that just because of my age now I can never draw? It just because this rig system was developed 30 years before I was able to. I don't know. I have a problem with that.
Well, and yeah, no, I get it. I think for me, the problem comes from the fact, Alan, that maybe the information's not real transparent because I don't know how it can be because there's a lot of people, putting in as non-residents for points in a lot of these states where if you looked at the stats,
Dude.
no way, man. Like
Dude,
it,
Utah, for example, Utah, when you're a resident, you have to choose one of the 5 once in a lifetime species. You can
Okay.
only put in for one of the 5, right? And even then, even though now you've increased your odds. So like I follow desert sheep in Utah and I have 22 points. So luckily, I don't have, 4/5 of the people were following moose, bighorn, goat, bison. So
Sure.
4/5 of the people had put their odds somewhere else, luckily, because if they were all getting desert sheep points, then I would have 5 times as many people in that pool. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
But Cliff, for the non-residents, they did them a huge favor. They said you can put in for all 5. Amazingly, you get charged for all 5.
Yeah.
And do you think that anybody's ever going to draw those tags? And they give a fraction of them to non-residents.
Yeah.
And now you have all, and like any non-resident putting in for Utah, I'm sorry, guys, that is not going to work out.
Yeah. You're making donations.
No, it's not going to work out. Like and you're going to see the dude on Instagram that drew,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
going to give
True.
you hope, but it's a false hope. Go get an awesome job, make a bunch of money, and go hunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
No,
the
yeah.
American dream. The American dream isn't winning a drawing.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And let's jump into that, man, because I all that stuff's super good points, but I think we can jump in, like put all
Yeah.
this into a positive light. So, Alan, what's like the so a guy's got to have some disposable income, and however he's gonna get that. There's lots of options for people who figure that out. That's for other podcasts to talk about, I
Yeah.
guess. But that what's like the 80, like if you're trying to go on the best hunts, and it could be the biggest animals like your focus is, or it could just be just epic adventure opportunities, stone sheep in northern British Columbia or whatever a guy wants to go on. What's the 80-20, if you're familiar with that concept? What's the 80-20 of figuring out like the best, where's the best bang for your bet, your buck, in
Yeah.
terms of what do you focus on to make sure you're going on the best hunts?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, that's one thing I think it's really important too. Like, you don't necessarily need to make ridiculous amounts of money to hunt high quality animals.
Right.
Like, for example, whitetail. Like, I love hunting big whitetail bucks, huge whitetail bucks. Like, I want to be in an area where they're there. It's never Whitetail hunting is very difficult. Like, as a
Sure.
Western guy, I don't know how much of you. I'm addicted to whitetail
I've
hunting.
I've done very little of it, Alan, just so you know.
It gets very addicting because it's like chess with these bucks. And anyway,
Yeah.
the point is, like, you know, I spend quite a bit of like in the whitetail world, like I spend what's considered to be quite a bit of money on whitetail hunting, but compared to a stone sheep, and
Yeah, sure.
I can hunt as much as I want,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so, and I'm hunting monster bucks. And so, like, the stone sheep's going to cost you 60 grand and you get 12 days. Okay.
Right.
That's not a good bang for your buck.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, of course, if you have that money, great, go do it.
Yeah.
But if you just want to, like, okay, like whatever, I live in some state and I'm trying to hunt public land for whitetail and it's just so hard and the average age is like 3, and it's like really, really tough. Okay, well, there's options to have a better time, and maybe again, if you like hunting big animals, right?
Yeah.
Mountain hunting. Let's look at that, for example. So like you have your sheep, which are astronomically priced, and then you have your mountain goat in the middle. But then you have Colorado mule deer and even over the counter Alaska Sitka blacktail deer
Yeah.
that you can go, like, if you go down to Southeast Alaska onto the islands and backpack into the Alpine, like you can do that whole thing, flight and everything, for like $2,500.
Yeah.
It's an over the counter tag, and
Yeah.
you're backpacking in country that is identical to coastal mountain goat country.
Sure.
And you're getting that full like Alaskan adventure. And like I did it on my own and shot a Boone and Crockett Sitka blacktail. In fact, when I shot it, it was the Velvet World Record.
Yeah.
And I did it on my own. I just called around to charter companies, found one that would fly me in. I looked on maps. I found some alpine. I said, land me in this lake. I'm going to hike up to that alpine and see what I can find. And I did it year after year until I shot a giant. And
Yeah.
that experience, that backpacking experience was every bit as cool as sheep or goat. And
Yeah,
it's
sure.
2,500 bucks, including commercial and charter flights.
Yeah.
And
So I got,
the tag. So like there's some incredible opportunities out there.
yeah, and you know what's funny about this, Alan? So I'm trying to keep all every time you talk, man, I end up with a bunch of like follow-on questions I have.
Okay.
And I wanna I wanna hit on with you exactly how you research these opportunities, like where the best spot is to find the, like how did you know that that area could produce a world-class Sitka blacktail? So we'll go there in a minute, but before we do that, this is a really interesting topic to me because I feel like it changes. Like over the years, the real opportunities,
Yeah.
like if you, I always use the analogy. I used to work in finance in my younger years. I always use the stock analogy. Like, where's the undervalued stock, right? And so I
Yeah.
always think like, where's the undervalued hunt in the hunting world, right? Because it always changes. Like there's some there like right now, mule deer, free range, true free range mountain mule deer. It's getting big ones are getting expensive. Like it's getting up there. Like but there's other opportunities. How do you notice the same thing? It always
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah. And also like the areas change, and there's
Yeah,
die-offs, and there's you know new things opened up, and you have to pay attention. Yeah, for sure. There's desert sheep's a good example. I mentioned I have desert sheep points in Utah. Oh, I would trade those in a heartbeat for bighorn points.
yeah,
But when I started putting in 22 years ago, desert sheep looked like they were just going to go to the moon in price.
yeah,
And now the bottom has fallen out on
yeah,
the price of desert sheep hunts because unlimited habitat, privately owned habitat in
yeah,
Mexico. And
yeah.
so, and
There's like
who
a
would have thought?
mysterious influx in supply on desert sheep.
Well, and we
Yeah,
know what's
yeah,
going on there, but it's
yeah, yeah,
okay. Like whatever,
yeah,
like
yeah.
they're
Whatever.
breeding, and I mean, hopefully some of it's still legit and you can find a legit hunt, but it's what it's doing is causing the price to come down. We're going to see desert sheep hunts be cheaper than Dall sheep hunts.
Yeah, sure.
We will see that. And it's
Yeah,
almost there, but we will see it because those trends, Dall sheep are continuing to skyrocket and desert sheep are continuing to stabilize and maybe even drop a little. And
yeah,
so, and who would have thought when, that desert sheep would go from $70,000 to $40,000?
right.
And maybe those aren't the exact numbers, and maybe I'm not comparing the exact
Yeah,
same
yeah,
tags, but something like that is happening. And so there are opportunities like that, and whitetail, the management continues to get better and better, and more places are getting leased up, which
yeah,
is improving the quality everywhere. Because now when somebody's paying for a lease instead of letting all their buddies hunt there, like the age class is going up. And so
yeah,
now like you can get into good whitetail property more easily than ever before,
yeah,
because there's just more of it because
yeah,
your neighbors are managed now, and mule deer, they say the heyday was the 60s or whatever. And it'll probably never be the same, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And it's unfortunately they're sensitive animal, and they're sensitive to different changes in urban sprawl and different things that whitetail are more resilient. And so you're going to see, unfortunately, we're going to see mule deer hunting get more and more difficult.
yeah.
And
Just because really of the biology of the animal to some
right,
extent, it's just more
right.
sensitive. Yeah,
And
and they,
and it's not where whitetail is expanding, mule deer's contracting, and then where whitetail is so private land based.
yeah,
In mule deer, not. I mean, there are of course, but mule deer's more of a public land, like,
yeah, yeah, sure, yeah,
and
yeah,
so then
like
you have like all these other factors, right?
yeah, and so it's crazy interesting because what this means is I see a lot of hunters who I mean, they want to book a mule deer hunt on X spot like 4 years ahead of time, 5 years ahead of time. And the first thing that rings in my head is like, wow, like that area could completely change, in
Right.
4 or 5 years. Like you
Yeah.
and what you find is at least what I find, Alan, tell me if you have a different opinion, but what I find is there's always a lag. Like a species, like a hunt, a specific hunt for a species in a certain area, it it'll be like the new hot thing, and then before it kind of peters out, it'll be a few years of everybody being like, oh, the hunting's like gone downhill, hunting's gone, but it takes like 5 years for the word to get out.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know so one of the tricks
true.
that I think obviously you've been good at, man, is you're spending a lot of time researching, and you keep mentioning like networking. When you say networking, are you talking to guides and outfitters, other hunters in these areas? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, you talk to as many people as you can as you're doing your research on a species, and I kind of focus in on a species like a few at a time.
Yeah,
And so then I really go down the rabbit hole on that animal, and where they are, where the biggest ones are. A huge resource is the record book databases. So both Pope and Young and Boone and Crockett have membership record database access. So like Boone and Crockett, I pay $50 a year for trophy search, and you literally can search unbelievable amounts of data. And of course, the newer data is more relevant. If you look historically, you know, pick a species, but you look historically, and it may be something different 50 years ago, where a lot of booners were being killed compared to today. So you look in the most recent records, and there's just a ton of information there. I spent a lot of time going through those databases. Same thing with Pope and Young. That
yep,
you can do a membership to their paid database and get access to every piece of data they have on every Pope and Young animal that's ever been entered. And it's extremely valuable. And then from there, you start talking to outfitters, and you start talking to people who have been with different outfitters, and you start getting information. I have in the notes section on my phone, I have a notebook for every species. And every single time I hear anything, any little hint, any little piece of, oh, that's an interesting piece of information, I open that notebook and I go to whatever it is, Central Barren Ground Caribou, and I enter that, somebody said this was an incredible hunt at this camp
yeah, yep.
in
That's a
this month or
Yeah, it's a
whatever.
good. Yeah. And as much detail as you have, it all
Yep.
matters.
And it's
Um,
amazing, like you think you'll remember it. When I open up those species, I'm like, wow, I totally forgot about
yeah.
these little data points. This is really helpful.
Yeah, sure. And that kind of leads me to the one thing cool about your quest from my perspective is I've heard you talk about the fact that you will spend, X amount of hunts chasing a specific species. And the way I view that is it's cool because you must be learning a ton about that specific species
Oh
before
man.
you kill it. Like you have
It's
the
so cool. You become an expert on that species in most
yeah,
cases.
yeah,
Sometimes you get lucky, like my bison, for example. I got extremely lucky, killed the state record on my first hunt. I mean,
yeah.
it was just like in whatever. So I'm not an expert on bison.
Yeah, you missed out on being an expert on
Yeah,
bison.
because I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
have to go back 5, 10 times, right?
Yeah, sure.
But I'll take it.
Yeah, no, I got it. Yeah, no complaints. You don't want to be,
Yeah.
but it just the thing is that I notice about hunting, and this is I talked about some of the positive things that I got out of guiding and outfitting. Is there were specific species and specific areas and stuff like that that I very much felt like an expert on because
Yeah.
I gotta iterate on it all the time. I gotta hunt the same species in the same areas, the same times. I think for people out there that are just hunting a week a year or 10 days a year, it's not a bad thing. There's people, everybody's got a different lifestyle, but you can't expect that you're going to become an expert, wilderness elk hunter if you're hunting 5 days a year and you've been at it for 10 years. I hear that a lot. Like guys will say, man,
Yeah.
I've been at it for 10 years and I just still don't know what I'm doing. It's like you don't know what you're doing
Right.
because
Yeah.
if you went and it's not, I'm not like there's so much to learn. I still have more to learn too. But if you went and hunted elk for 2 months straight, just one time, you get pretty damn
Yeah.
good at it because you're able to iterate on it. Do you feel any different about that, or you got thoughts on that,
No,
Alan?
I totally agree. I do think that, like when I say that I can become an expert on a species, I mean, that it's probably, I'm not going to be like somebody who does it for a living,
Yeah, no,
right? But
I get it. Yeah,
but I do think too that your general hunting ability helps you adapt. So like, let's take Sitka blacktail as an example.
yeah,
I
you get
went three, I
crossover,
went
is
three
what you're saying.
years. What's that?
It's not like you get crossover between the species.
Yeah, yeah. So I went for 3 years Sitka blacktail hunting before I killed the buck I was after. And I hunted a total, I think it was 35, 36 days. So in 35, 36 days, I'm probably not the world's expert on Sitka blacktail, but
Yeah,
I mean, I looked over and judged 350 different bucks in those 3 years, roughly.
yeah,
And all of my mountain hunting experience from many, many years of mountain goat, sheep, and mule deer hunting and elk hunting have came into play where like I'm backpack hunting in the alpine, like I know how this works.
sure.
And then like I'm judging deer, like I've hunted mule deer for 25 years too. So I like that all kind of plays in. And so like the whole picture comes in, and yeah, I'm pretty much an expert on Sitka black-tailed deer. Now, am
Yeah,
I as good as somebody who guides for 6 weeks a year for the last 20 years? No, of course not.
yeah.
But generally, I would say it's pretty high level of understanding on that species, way higher level than if I had, again, nothing, I don't have anything against this for like, if you want to do this, that's your thing and it's cool.
yeah,
But for me to just go and shoot a Sitka blacktail and check the box, I got that species. And I mean, literally, I could do that in 2 days. Buy a ticket, fly
sure.
up there, hike in and shoot one and hike out. Like that would be it. I would know nothing about that animal.
Yeah,
Nothing.
yeah, yeah. And so it's just fun to learn about them. I think, man.
It's so fun.
Yeah,
It is amazing. Like people are telling me, like, so this guy got to blacktail camp here last night I was talking to him. He just got here and he says these blacktail are kind of dim-witted compared to whitetail. And I'm like, bro, you don't understand these blacktail. He's like, what do you mean? He's like I'm in my stand and these does, they don't get spooky. Like if I, crinkle a piece of paper or something, they don't even look up at me. And whitetail would be freaking out. I'm like, yeah, they are not as jumpy as whitetail. But when you're hunting a mature blacktail buck, a Boone and Crockett blacktail buck, I'm telling you what, that buck never makes mistakes.
he's
Ever.
like a ghost.
If he comes in, he might not be jumpy. But dude, he ain't coming in.
Yeah.
They are so strategic. Like if I have a Boone and Crockett, like, or a giant 7-year-old whitetail and a giant 7-year-old blacktail, I feel more comfortable killing that whitetail. That
Yeah,
whitetail is going to show himself on a red moon in a cold front, like pretty dang. I'm going to kill that buck. These
yeah,
blacktail, they don't make those mistakes. They eventually, obviously, you kill them. They can, but so they're different. The fact that the whitetail's way more jumpy and alert inside a bow range doesn't mean it's easier to kill,
yeah,
or doesn't mean it's harder to kill. Excuse me. The
yeah.
blacktail has way less acute senses, but he's way more strategic and he just doesn't make the same mistakes. So
Yeah,
like the animals are so different. And like if I hadn't been hunting these things for, I mean, whatever, I'm pushing 30 days this year hunting these blacktail, right?
yeah.
And people are like, what? 30 days? Like, yeah, and it's been a freaking blast. But
Yeah.
but the point is, like, these animals are just so different and it's so cool. So cool.
Yeah. No, I'm totally with you. I'm like, I used to, when I have 8 or 9 years ago, and somebody would ask me about mountain goats, I would naively say they're dumb. Well, what I realized over hunting them is they're not necessarily dumb. They're different.
Yep.
Are they dumb if you're shooting with a gun? Yeah. They're easier to kill with a gun. It's because they've developed a way of avoiding predators that's like get on the steepest rock possible where something
Right.
can't get me. They're not like all of them are just
But if you're a
different,
mountain
like you
lion or
said.
a bow hunter, that's a pretty
Yeah,
good defense.
yeah, exactly. So, so yeah, they're all different, and I think your approach to it is you get the value of that, man. Like you get to learn about these species, and I I think in my journey, that's why I've guided a lot of different species. It was just because I wanted to learn about that species, and it was the way that in my little path I was able to get exposed to it for a long period of time where I was able to iterate on it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And
It's
learn
it's
from
it's
each
it's
other.
an amazing thing to learn the differences, like for example, so many animals, like when they feel pressure, they hide.
Yeah.
Well, mountain goat, when it feels pressure, it goes into steep rocks. An antelope, when it feels pressure, it gets distance. Like, they don't all hide, right?
No. Yeah, yeah.
So they just react. It's so cool how different each species is.
Yeah, sure. And you get that experience when you're able to spend some time with them. And
Yeah.
it's funny too, man, because I noticed what I've noticed over the years is when I'm around somebody who has been very, very, specifically species focused, which I envy those people. I think to some extent they have like a longer attention span than I do. But somebody who's just, guided doll sheep their whole life, or those sort of things, when you're around somebody like that, you realize they know a bunch of stuff that they almost can't verbalize. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Now
Yeah.
they can't verbalize. And I'm gonna bring this. We're gonna talk about jujitsu here, Alan. I know you've been waiting to talk about jujitsu. I have too, and this is where I'm gonna connect it, man, because I feel like if I get around these guys that know a species really well, they're like a phenomenal hunting training partner.
Yeah.
And Alan and I both do jujitsu. We were talking about it before the podcast. And one thing for me in my progression in that martial art is I have noticed when I get in spots where I'm around where I have like two or three phenomenal training partners, my knowledge and experience, I get like these big bumps in my capabilities.
Right.
You think
Right.
that's a decent analogy?
Oh, it's brilliant. Yeah. I mean, no, really, if you're hunting with people who really know the game, like, you just absorb information. Like, I've gotten so much information from all of the seasoned guides that I've hunted with, and my hunting partners that are have been doing it for 20, 30 years. Like, those guys, that's really where you learn. I mean, you learn from the animals, but it helps too to have somebody point out to you their observations, and you do it together. You bounce things off each other, just like in jujitsu.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well, have you
exactly.
tried the grip this way? Oh man, no, I hadn't. That's a good point. When you whatever, that's
Yeah, yeah,
yep.
yeah. And I think I guess one thought I have on that for the listeners, if they're going on guided hunts, how do you get in a position where you're going on a guided hunt, but part of it is trying to make it clear to the guide or the outfitter you're going with, like, hey, I'm here. I wanna get put into great opportunities, but I also want to learn a lot about the species and what you guys are doing. How does a guy approach that, Alan?
Well, I don't think you need to announce it. I think you just need to ask questions.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
just
I
being
think that,
legitimate.
in fact, if you announce it, it almost might, like,
Make it weird.
it might, yeah. But if you
Yeah,
just
yeah,
said, like, whatever, if what do you think that buck scores? And the guy's like, oh, I think he scores 165. And you're like, okay, walk me through that, because, like, here's what I'm seeing. And, like, whatever, just try to have conversations,
yeah,
be
yeah,
friendly, and, like, I
yeah,
don't know. I mean, also too, like, you know, really, like, trust your guide.
yeah,
Trust your guide and show your guide that you trust them. It goes a long ways to, like, if the guide feels like you're trying to second guess them, or that like, it's just, I mean, it's bad karma, first of all, to go on a guided hunt and try to guide the guide. Like,
yeah,
it's annoying. And even if you do, like, maybe you have one little thing that might be better, like, who cares? Just go with the flow, I mean, and if you do have an idea, present it as an idea. It's like, here's an
yeah,
idea. And then if they say no, say, cool, that's great.
yeah,
Like, these guides, like, I mean, this is what they do every day,
yeah.
and, like, I don't know, like, anyway, I cut off subject there a little
No,
bit,
no,
but
no. I think it's a good point, Alan, because and it'll be valuable for folks that are going on guided hunts. There's an interpersonal thing, and I think most guides, if they feel like there's a little pressure from the hunter or something
a little
back at them,
threatened,
and they don't
maybe.
trust
Yeah.
them, they
Yeah.
they tend to shut down. It's not that they quit doing their job, but they can't they tend to be a little bit less transparent about what they're doing, and it hinders the process. So I think your approach is is a correct one, man. Is that,
Yeah.
I'm notorious for it. I was actually last few days I've been helping Jay Scott scout for desert sheep for a hunt he's got in 3 or 4 days, and I always do it with vegetation. We'll be glassing sheep. I'm like, Jay, what is that they're eating? Like, I want to know what that,
Uh-huh.
that like, and that's just like, and one, it just interests me. I'm a plant dork. But he never minds, in that as an example, like he doesn't mind answering those questions. And it's not like, it'd be different if I was like, Jay, I'm here to help you, but today I want you to tell me every plant we walk by at. That's not
Yeah, yeah.
gonna happen.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, there's so many opportunities to learn. And sometimes too, like, man, there's so much bad information on social media.
Yeah,
Like a lot of the, influencer, whatever people are not qualified to be teaching people.
sure.
And a lot of them are attempting to regurgitate information they heard somewhere else. And man, people say like, who should I follow? Who should I listen to? And I always say you can't go wrong listening to guides.
Yeah,
These guys are professionals. Like there's very, very few guides out there that, I mean, if they've been doing it for, 10 plus years, that there's very, very few of those guys that you're not going to learn a ton from.
yeah,
So yeah, as much as you can, and they're not going to have a lot of followers. And then one of the problem is a lot of those guys don't post much.
yeah, yeah.
That's anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's an interesting dynamic, Alan. There's a few, I just know my little space in Colorado, and I know of several guys that I was blessed to spend time with and hunt with, and they're great guys who they've guided, 65, 75 successful bighorn sheep hunts, and nobody knows who they are,
Right.
and they don't care.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? They don't care. And to be honest, a lot of them probably wouldn't be phenomenal teachers, but their knowledge is like incredible. You know what I mean? And
Agreed.
I'm with you, man. It in some ways, a lot of times I think to myself, like, not to take away anybody that has a big following and does that, but I do think that they're the real hunting's weird, man, because even if you're going after trophies, there's not like an official scoreboard. It's not, guides or hunters. Nobody knows who the Michael Jordan is. Nobody knows who
Mhm.
because it's such a broad like endeavor that's kind of unknown. So it's
There's
hard.
so
Yeah,
many different ways to track results, like
yeah,
a guide, for example, maybe making it all happen, but the animal doesn't go in the record books under his name,
right, sure, yeah,
unfortunately, right?
yeah,
I mean, it's just like in basketball, let's say you mentioned Michael Jordan, like if somebody's on Instagram claiming to be the best basketball player in the world, you'd say, okay, well let's see his stats,
yeah, yeah,
right? I mean, it's pretty simple. Like you're
yeah,
claiming to
yeah,
be LeBron James, well, you better have that number of rings, right?
yeah, yeah,
And it's
sure,
just anyway, yeah, that's one real problem in certain activities is self-promotion uh can many times make somebody look like an expert and there's no way to check their story.
yeah, yeah. Which I guess in the end it doesn't matter other than just everybody people need to realize like the hunting world is a nuanced world, and you got to
Yeah.
figure out like you got to do your own sifting of the
Mhm.
information that's told you. I think that's
Well,
probably
for example, Jay, he's one of the guys out there who is a freaking legitimate guide hunter, like no tons of knowledge,
yeah,
and he's active on social media.
yeah,
It's
sure,
actually not a incredibly common thing.
right.
Limited instances of that.
Yeah, I think Jay's a great example of that as you point out. I think sometimes there's not a lot of instances of that, Alan. Well, I'm sure like in your guys' outfitting business up in BC, you had guides that were phenomenal hunters,
Yeah.
and they don't have like there's some functional issues, right? Like they're focused on that. They've been focused on that since they're 18 years old, they haven't developed phenomenal communication skills. Technology skills they may not have internet 9 months of the year. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
so it's hard to,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's some functional reasons why they may not be out there, but no, I hear you. And I think it's important that people, do realize that. And on that topic, if there was a couple things that, somebody that was really interested in the skill set of becoming a better hunter, just in general, Alan, what would be a couple things that you'd tell them to focus on?
I mean, I think it's just time,
Yeah.
time in the field. Like,
Yep.
I don't know. Definitely, rubbing shoulders with people who know can make a huge difference though.
Yeah.
Like, man, some of those boys, like when you glass with like I've glassed before with like a couple of the Wade Lemon boys for mule
Yeah.
deer. Oh my
Sure.
gosh, I thought I could glass. And those guys, man, it's like, holy smokes, these guys are good. Like, and so then it raises your level. You're like, okay, there's another level here that I
Yeah.
need to shoot for. Like it is, and so I think that being around people that raise the bar is always good.
Yeah. I totally agree, man. And I was in that's when I think it's hard in the hunting world. Like you got to kind of you have to work to try to get some people that you hunt with that you can learn from. And it's like anything. That just takes time to
Mhm.
find out who those people are
Yeah.
and all of that. But I one of the questions, it's interesting because it's in this whole social media spectrum. And you do a lot of backpack hunts and long duration hunts. Kind of on that last question there, do you focus on like your physical fitness, Alan? Are there particular things that you do in that regard, or you just stay in good shape?
Yeah. So I used to I used to do a lot of training before sheep season.
Yeah.
You know, I would, and I'm not a gym guy. I don't like weightlifting. I'm not like I do a little bit of it just to try to have some general like strength, but like I'm not huge into, but I'm talking I would trail run and backpack and put in a lot of scouting work in the Wasatch Mountains in Utah for muleys to on purpose, like extra to be ready for my sheep hunt, right? But I will say that my body over the years, like even as I've gotten older, has just become more and more adapted to mountain work.
Yeah.
And like I can just pick it up now without a lot. To last summer, summer of 21, I went on a huge doll sheep hunt in the Yukon that was like massive miles, all self-sustained backpacking. Like we did I kept track of it on my Garmin watch. 75, we did 75 miles over mountains with our packs over the course of 2 weeks. And it was big, I mean, people may say 75 miles isn't very much. It's not. That's not. If you're on a trail, 75 miles is nothing. But when you're bushwhacking in country that doesn't have trails and it's very, very steep and you're crossing valleys and rivers and everything else and traversing peaks, like it's a lot. And all I did before that hunt was jujitsu
Yeah. Yeah.
and I felt
Yes.
great. I felt great. So that to me
It-
was a nice, I was testing that. I'm like, okay, I'm in
yeah.
awesome shape right now. I'm not gonna do any running or hiking. I'm just gonna go and see what happens. I did feel a little bit of tiredness in my legs at times.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit more than when I had put in that specific work,
Yeah.
but it was totally manageable. And
Yeah.
I had a 28-year-old guide that claimed I was in all of his years of guiding, the best in shape client he'd ever had. Um, so yeah, I think that works too.
Yeah. And I
Have
totally.
you tested that?
Yeah, so I got a I mean, I don't want this to be a commercial on jujitsu because I think this is going to apply to like other athletic endeavors that people can do as hobbies like all year. Because I'm the same,
Yeah,
Alan. Like,
maybe like it applies at like 50% if we're comparing it to jujitsu. Let's be honest. But
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah. Okay, so jujitsu is unique, and I noticed it because when I started, doing jujitsu like 6 or 7 years ago, I was guiding a lot of backpack hunts, and I'm kind of a tall, lengthy, skinny guy. And I was always in good shape. Like my wife's an ultra marathon runner. Like I always ran with her, and like I stayed in what would be considered good shape. But the thing I know, I always had like back pain, always when I was backpack hunting. And I never felt like I was in phenomenal shape. When I started doing jujitsu and I developed a core, because if
Yeah.
you do jujitsu very long, and I'm sure
Yeah.
it applies to a bunch of other sports to you guys. So, but if once you develop a core, to me, it changes the world of backpack hunting. That's
Yeah.
my
The way you
thought.
can handle that pack. Yeah.
Yeah, you can handle that pack. And I think there's like little things about it that you don't even realize that packs make. If you don't have a good core, that pack is wearing on you a lot more than you think. And so for me, jujitsu in particular, it built that up for me. And then the other thing is that you get kind of like a mini CrossFit workout in most jujitsu gyms because you're always going to peak your cardio if they're sparring at all. So
Mhm.
so to me, it's optimal, or I don't know if it's the perfect, but it's pretty darn close to it to prep for these hunts because you're able to build up your cardio and that core strength. That's
Yeah.
my view on. So yeah, I think it's a great use of time. But the other thing it does for you, man, is what you hit on is I'm not a gym guy either. I wouldn't. There's no way I could spend the amount of time staying in shape if I didn't have another hobby that overlapped in that
Yeah.
regard.
Yeah.
And I noticed too from guiding that the guys that were in the best shape that I guided generally had another hobby that was physical. They were like phenomenal tennis players, or they were
Mhm.
phenomenal,
Mhm.
something else that kept them in good shape.
It's there's something about like doing something you love to stay in shape.
Yeah,
Like, going to the gym, I hate. Like I hate.
yeah,
I have to talk myself into it. Like I have to drink a pre-workout to even want to get in the car, right?
yeah,
Like like I just don't like it. But when I know I'm training the next morning for jujitsu, I have a hard time going to sleep at night. I'm so excited. Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
can't stop
sure.
thinking about who am I going to roll with and what am I going to do. Like it's so exciting. So finding something, whether it's like a basketball league or whatever, I don't know, like something that you can really kind of be excited about and even measure and compete and have success with makes it so fun. I don't know. I think that's one thing jujitsu is so addicting. And so I think that just helps us stay in better shape because we want to be there.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. And that sport in particular is available to most people.
Yeah.
If you got some population around where you live, there's probably a jujitsu gym. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you're the same way, Alan. Like every guy I talk to, I say, dude, you really should, even if the guy's 55 years old, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's there's a lot of crossover and all sorts of things. And I'm sure we could talk about it forever. Cause I mean, that particular, there's so many, I think when you fall in love with certain things, if it's hunting or, or jujitsu, you find analogies in it, right? You find
Mhm.
analogies to other aspects of your life. And that's why to me, there's like 1,000 analogies between jujitsu and hunting. But I might bore you in the audience if I went down
Oh,
that
you
route.
won't bore me. But yeah,
But Alan, is there anything else you wanna hit on, man? It's been a joy chatting with you.
yeah, it's been really fun. I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, cool,
We
man.
talked about some cool stuff, I think. So, yeah, I mean, we definitely have other things we could get into on a different day.
Yeah, yeah. No, sounds good, Alan. Thanks for coming on, man. Where can people follow you?
Uh, Instagram, it's just Alan Bolen, all one
Okay,
word. So, yeah,
perfect.
I
Good.
haven't been too active lately. I haven't posted in a couple months, but whatever. I go in spurts.
Yeah, yeah. No, I got you. Yeah. So, guys out there, if you want to follow Alan, get on his Instagram account. Thanks, man.
Okay, thanks, Cliff. See ya.